So what exactly is a tesseract, I hear you asking? See, just as the one-dimensional line becomes a two-dimensional square becomes a three-dimensional cube, so does the three-dimensional cube become what exactly? I'm jumping the gun. Signalis is a classically inspired survival horror game. Ugh, look, this video was going to be 100% about a game called Signalis, and you can see in the early stages me fighting with myself for it to stay that way, but to be honest, I wrote this script in one 30-hour sitting, and it's not that anymore. So if you don't even care about this game or haven't played it yet, don't worry, there will be no spoilers.
2 years ago, I tried to make a video essay. It was bad. See, I'd noticed something in this game that, after searching, I couldn't find anyone else talking about. For various reasons, I'd forced myself to sit down and write and record the whole thing in one 36-hour session. And when I sat down to watch what I'd made the next day, it was like the work of a stranger. Stupid opinions I didn't agree with, jumping back and forth to argue with myself, beefing with kids. At one point I started just listing shapes. It was unsalvageable. I couldn't upload this. Seeing anything about the game during this time, even bringing it up in conversation, gave me this strange feeling. I had no choice but to come back to this, if not to finish it, to at least turn it into something else. Something more introspective, personal. Hell, it's already got 2 Jerrys. What's the harm in adding a 3rd? Pretty nostalgia critic delivery there. It's very. He'd always end a shot like, and then he'd hold for way too long, and then it'd cut to a clip. Oh, nostalgia critic, where have you gone? Is he still doing stuff? What am I doing? Video!
Just, I'm sorry in advance. I am. Oh God, I can't get, hang on. Why don't I just get out sideways? Survival horror game, but it presents itself in a way that is dripping with unique style. It often wears its homages on its sleeve. In fact, the game's press kit straight up calls it a love letter to the golden era of survival horror, often name-dropping some of its direct inspirations, but it wraps these inspirations in a fresh, deliberate style that, well, I'd call it greater than the sum of its parts, if not for the fact that every part is great. Truthfully, I'd easily recommend Signalis on its gameplay alone, and even if somehow you took one tiny look at the game and wrote it off as, oh, that's just 2D Resident Evil with anime girls, you'd be wrong. It's actually 3D, but you'd still absolutely have fun with it. But there's something more here. Behind the classic survival horror gameplay and stylish visuals, there's something in the way it conveys its story and setting. Given that it lists both Silent Hill and David Lynch as inspirations, it's a given that it definitely employs a surreal, often dreamlike tone in the way it presents itself. But at this point, it would honestly be an insult to keep just comparing it to the works it was inspired by. I know the game's own marketing constantly cites its influences, but in the make-or-break world of trying to get eyes on an indie game, honestly it feels like you kind of have to make comparisons to works that are already popular. Hell, even if you don't do it, someone else with good intentions probably will. Pink and the Final Phonorecord is an upcoming top-down adventure game with an irreverent tone, don't say it, tongue-in-cheek RPG-style dialogue, don't say it, an often eccentric soundtrack, do not say, okay, look, it's a little bit like Earth, an Animal Crossing-esque indie. Oh, okay, sure, because it's got animals in it, I guess? Comparisons like this are, of course, reductive, even when they're on the mark, but it undeniably is a useful shorthand for advertising a game to someone who's only giving it a passing glance amidst a whole list of games. This is just how this part of the industry has ended up having to work. It's worth pointing out that this piece about Tink is actually from a wider article showcasing a bunch of upcoming indie games, presumably whizzing past the writer on a conveyor belt. Tony Hawk, Animal Crossing meets Earthbound, Resident Evil with anime girls. Can you see it yet? It'll pop out at you like a magic eye picture once you know what you're looking for. It's okay if you don't.
Now, this is embarrassing, but I got my first real online recognition from Game Grumps remixes. Cut me some slack, I was a teenager. I think I'd pride myself on how quickly I could get these remixes finished and released, knowing there were other musicians all using the same clips. And that was fine. We all did our own different takes on the same few songs, but there was something else. A weird, unhealthy paranoia. I was plagued by this irrational fear that if I took even slightly too long to release a remix, someone by complete coincidence would upload a literally identical remix just before me. I know that's ridiculous, impossible. That'd be like something from the Twilight Zone, but it terrified me. So I'd race to get my tracks finished as fast as I could, just in case. There was this one point in time 11 years ago where I was waiting on laptop repairs, so I couldn't make any music. And in the meantime, I sequestered myself. I noted down the clips from the videos that I wanted to remix once I had my computer back, and I refused to listen to anyone else's remix during that time. Through some bizarre logic, this gave me a kind of plausible deniability in my mind. Like, if a remix I went on to make turned out to be identical to one that had come out during this period, I hadn't heard it. And that would protect me somehow, like the guy who came up with Frankenstein 200 years after Mary Shelley. But during that time, seeing remixes pop up in my feed, even though I wasn't listening to them, hell, seeing new episodes show up, just hearing anything about them gave me this burning feeling of resentment and anxiety. 2 years ago, I looked at this symbol and saw something that, to my knowledge, nobody else had. Surely by now, countless people have noticed and told everyone. But I wouldn't know.
Despite the solid rigidity of its core gameplay, Signalis often conveys the different layers of its plot through more artistic and interpretive means, like symbolism or reference, often in the background. There is a central narrative, but it's surreal and disjointed. It does a good job of conveying the feeling of its plot regardless, but if you just strap yourself in and stick with what's literally shown to you, by the end you might find yourself asking big questions like, what? This is a good point to come clean with you. I'm so sorry. I'm just a humble gamer. I'm by no means a Philistine, but there's so much cool and interesting stuff that I've been meaning to check out for well over a decade, and this includes a lot of the surreal or cosmic horror works that this game draws from. In fact, making this video has done me a real big favor in giving me an excuse to finally check out some of this stuff for research. Thanks, Signalis. But truthfully, up until this week, I was wholly uninitiated in works that present themselves in this largely interpretive way. I am not the guy who should be making this video. But I'm trying my best, I promise. But that brings up a good point. I am just a humble gamer, and how many of those will be playing this game?
In 2020, I made a mod for the 2017 game Prey. There's this one character called Marco Simmons who appears in a cutscene but due to an oversight is not only missing from the list of employees but from the station entirely. So I returned Simmons to the employee list, that was the easy part. Then I scoped out a place to put him. See, many of the corpses in the game have this little hint of environmental storytelling. I wanted to replicate that. I found the perfect place in this security booth. It already had a smashed screen, a knocked over chair, dropped Simmons in there and the story tells itself. He holed up in the security booth, something spooked him, he fell back in his chair and smashed his head on the screen. So what spooked him? Well, there's already a calendar in there, so I added a second calendar on the floor and turned the first one into a mimic. I even moved a monitor slightly to the side so a clever player would have another way of getting in now that the room's slightly more important. There was a lot of work involved that I won't bother to mention, but in the end, I was very happy with it. So I released it. Just kidding. I decided that I'd showcase this mod along with a few other fixes in a comprehensive stream. I'd get a guest, and I'd play through Prey with my encyclopedic knowledge of the game. Not a speedrun, just comfy and thorough with a few little secrets I hadn't seen anyone else notice. Since quite a bit of the background plot's conveyed through books and articles, I was even thinking of commissioning some voiceover and small animatics to make those parts more fun. Of course, I didn't have the time or energy to work on something like that right now, so I put a pin in it for the time being and decided to. 2 years later, a mod came out called Justice for Simmons, in which a random existing corpse was replaced with Simmons, meaning now there's just a random other person still missing. Oh well, guess I missed my chance.
Surreal, interpretive stories aren't something new in video games. Even Silent Hill cites inspiration from Lynch, but at least in the mainstream you'll often find that it's at least a bit reined in. Silent Hill is chock full of symbolism, but its core narrative is still reasonably easy to follow. Despite their dreamy and surreal presentation, most of its revelations are still quite literal. Like, we all know exactly what James did, for example.
Kissed her. Kiss her. Why'd you do it? I love you.
Sorry if I just spoiled Silent Hill 2 for you, but the twist is that he loves his wife. In an interview, one of the two lead developers, Yuri Stern, specifically brings up this type of comparison, using Lynch's film Lost Highway and the film Jacob's Ladder. It's at this point that, if this video was cribbing any specific style, I'd have a popular friend read out the quote. Luckily, I have no intention of bothering anyone I care about for something like this.
I feel this is the key to a good mystery, being able to give every detail, meaning the audience can deduct, but never simply explaining the meaning. I feel it's what separates a movie like Lost Highway from Jacob's Ladder. Both movies have a mysterious feeling full of symbolism to them, but one of them gives away everything with its ending, while the other keeps us guessing, staying with us long after the credits rolled. Yet it never feels like anything in it was meaningless or random. I hope that's what you wanted, you ungrateful fuck.
So I've just watched both of these movies back to back, which was kind of like going from freeform jazz to The Lick performed with Minecraft blocks. And yeah, it's a great comparison with just how far on opposite ends of the spectrum these films are. Jacob's Ladder does this really bare minimum thing, just enough to get over the thinky movie bar. It bluntly solves its mysteries in this quite ham-fisted way at the last minute, leaving only a single question. Is it X or is it Y? It's like the Inception spinning top. Does it fall or doesn't it? Well, it's either one or the other. That is something to think about, I guess, but it's multiple choice with only two options. It's not keeping me up at night, you know? Lost Highway, on the other hand, is more like a dot-to-dot puzzle with all of the numbers missing. Like, oh god, what am I supposed to do with this? But it's clearly interested in evoking feelings and concepts more than a literal sequence of events, and I can see where Silent Hill 2 got some of its inspiration from.
Sit down! Kiss her.
Look, ask someone to spoil Jacob's Ladder and they can do it in a sentence. Ask the same of Lost Highway and what do you even say? But ask someone what Jacob's Ladder is about and they'll probably start with, oh, it's about this guy who blah blah blah, reeling off a literal synopsis. But what is Lost Highway about? And there's the meat of it. It's about inadequacy, jealousy, masculinity, sexuality, saxophone, this cool-ass Uncle Fester-looking guy that steals the show. Hell yeah, love this guy. It's like a piece of music with no lyrics, or an abstract painting. You don't need a clear literal subject to evoke feelings and convey themes, and it doesn't matter if there's no one correct understanding to be drawn from it. By the way, I know these are probably bottom-of-the-barrel, entry-level points to be making here. Like, it's probably Art 101. Most of you probably knew this when you were 15, but give me a break. It's been one day. I'm trying my best. I'm catching up. Jacob's Ladder does still have its merits on other fronts, though. It's not a bad film. I am just talking in this one context, obviously. But last damning thing I'll say about these movies, despite all of Jacob's Ladder's effort to make some cool demonic visuals, no shot in that movie looks even half as stylish and striking as this one.
And your name? What the fuck is your name?
God, I love this guy. Who is he? And so with that, Lost Highway wins. See you next time, folks. Oh god, Signalis, right. Signalis finds a really good home in the middle of these two examples, just a little bit further across from Silent Hill. It has a literal story to tell, but much of it needs to be deduced, and a lot of it is up for interpretation. The symbolism of background details highlight core themes or hint at the nature of what's going on more often than any of the dialogue. Scenes will often be heavier with metaphor than exposition. It's no coincidence Stern chose these two films as examples, with both involving a possible dream element. The game is dreamlike in the way it moves narratively, not necessarily making sense on its surface. It's a sea of symbolism and feelings. And yeah, like I said, this isn't something new for the medium at all, especially in indie games. There are countless, indie games especially, that incorporate artistic elements of heavy surrealism or the abstract to convey a story. It's just that, you know, this is the first one that's also been fun. That was a joke, okay? Just a joke, alright? I love following an old woman around until she sits on a bench and dies. Still a joke! Still a joke. Do the smash cut already. Do the smash. I am kidding, of course, but I think that is a point to a lesser extent. See, a lot of indie games that lie on the more artsy side often use gameplay as more of a vehicle for delivering that art. Or at least the story is often stronger than the gameplay in some way. Or at least they're marketed to that strength. You can probably reel off a whole bunch of artsy indie games that are a joy to play, but Signalis is marketed more on its tightly designed retro-inspired gameplay. Go watch the trailers on the Steam page and you'll see a really neatly designed survival horror game. Hell, it'd even be easy to assume that all of those words popping up all over the video are just stylistic trailer flair rather than being actual text that pops up on screen in the game at several points. And that's great, because it does work entirely on its gameplay. It's perfectly fine to get to the end and go, huh, no idea what that was about, but I had fun. That's a valid experience, but it does guarantee a larger exposure to an audience that doesn't really have the intended kind of grasp of the non-literal that the designers were intending. If you've played the game, you'll know of a scene where the main character takes physical damage from a familiar sound. No spoilers, of course, but this whole scene could not be a more clear and obvious metaphor for being faced with a painful memory but not being strong enough to confront it. Anyway, here's a thread where several people are so desperate for a literal answer that they're trying to figure out who shot her. I'm not saying I do have the experience and authority, by the way. Like, I've watched one David Lynch film and that was yesterday. So, I'm just talking shit, I guess.
You'll notice that this screenshot is of a deleted post. When I started making this video, the post was still up and it spoke about how they'd misunderstood the scene as the character literally being shot. And there were numerous replies just as silly, claiming that it was obviously this one other character. Just a bunch of people misunderstanding even the most basic of metaphors. But the post is gone. Maybe because they realized? I don't know. But I didn't screenshot it. Not because I forgot, but because I'd get around to it later. I spend so much of my life waiting to get around to things, expecting the whole world to wait with me. After my second Halloween video, I had a lot of ideas and potential avenues that I wanted to follow it up with. I'll keep doing the big mainline videos, but I have so much more of the surrounding story in my head, and I've been mulling over ways to get that information across. One of those ideas was an audio thing, like a podcast or something. I toyed with the concept of an anthology-like thing, centered on a records admin for Ullsbridge Police Department tasked with categorizing audio evidence for digital storage, with the framing device being that we're hearing what his computer can hear from an unknown perspective. I realize this is real similar to an existing podcast called The Magnus Archives, about an archivist tasked with organizing a collection of physical records, complete with its own framing device where they're being listened to via their tape recorders. I talked this over, both in a video and with friends, and we came to the conclusion that, sure, there's a structural similarity, but it's different enough that it could feel like a nod and still be fine. Plus, I'd already set up the theme of something being in the computers, so the framing device makes sense on its own merit. Alright, I'll go through with it. Of course, I don't quite have the time and energy to work on that right now, so I'll put a pin in it for the time. 2 years later, a sequel to the Magnus Archives began airing. It was centered on a group of records admins categorizing unknown audio posts, with the framing device being that we're hearing what their computers can hear from an unknown perspective. Oh well, guess I missed my chance.
Theory crafting is a word that doesn't mean what I apparently think it means. Huh. Well, the way I've seen it spring up within the past few years has referred to a certain way of collaboratively consuming media that has a much heavier focus on the following output, especially with video games. It's most common among certain types of games, you know where I'm going with this, and it's reached a point where some media knows its best shot at popularity is as theory bait. There's this one Ebbets comic strip where someone talks to their friend who spends all of their time playing multiplayer games or listening to music with friends. And the first person asks them, "Don't you ever want to make something?" To which they reply, "Interpreting is generative." And this line really hit me when I first read it because I really hadn't considered that. Of course, multiplayer gaming is generative in a way in that you create an unscripted experience that's unique every time, whatever, cool.
I love him, he's the baby.
But literally just consuming art, especially with others? Oh, of course. Lost Highway didn't expect you to watch the movie, swallow it down, and drive home in silence. You discuss it with the people you just watched it with or others who watched it, but that's not the end of the comic. In the final panel, the first person with disappointment says, "I can't be an auteur of that." Shocking twist. They didn't just want the personal satisfaction of creating something, but instead the recognition for having created it. But sadly, this comic was written in 2013, and actually, now you can. Smiley face. Why did I put a smiley face in the script? This isn't anything new. Actually, that statement was false long before the comic came out. Who's this guy? And this guy? Okay, not that one. But even reviewing a piece of media, sharing your interpretations, especially if you comically missed the point, can make you a prominent figure. Hell, even before YouTube, who was this guy? Who was this guy? No, seriously, why can't I remember anyone? Oh god, who is this guy? Okay, so you can see that as I'm writing this script, I'm arguing with my own points in real time before I can even get to making them. But look, there has been a very specific boom in a very specific type of generative interpreting in the last few years, and one with an obvious audience of a certain type. 8 years ago, a little indie game came out called Five Nights at Freddy's 2. And whatever you think to this children's pop-up book created by a conservative Christian fundamentalist, it did something that I thought was really cool at the time. It pretended to be a sequel. And it was a clever trick. Dialogue would talk about the old place and the new suits, and there was the fact that everything was so much more shiny and modern. And then bam, it hits you with your paycheck dated before the original game, as well as a newspaper clipping literally telling you that they plan to reopen a new place with a smaller budget. It was a prequel. Sometimes a good twist can be 100% literal. Move over, Jacob. But in 2014, hang on a sec. 93, 94, 95. 21-year-old me. Christ, I was 21? God. Okay, 21-year-old me was seeing something really strange. People were openly arguing about whether or not this was a prequel. And I'm not talking about people who just hadn't seen the picture. It did only appear after clearing a bonus night, after all. But people who had understandably gone through the whole game thinking it was a sequel, I mean, we all did, had seen the picture and still refused to change their mind. Not just one or two, but a whole bunch of the game's early fandom seemed to be arguing this. A lot of them making really ridiculous stretches to keep their view, like maybe whoever wrote the check was just fixated on the year 1987. Or some of them even admitting that it was less about their own interpretation, but instead about being on the right team. And by God were some people steamed about it. I mean, look at this clown.
Is this a religion now? You guys are sure treating this like a religion. I'm just going to ignore all the evidence that I'm wrong. Maybe the person who wrote the check went insane and is obsessed with the bite of 87, so he wrote it by mistake. That is so stupid. Everything that Scott writes is deliberate. All this silly arguing is ruining conversations that we could be having about other parts of the story. Stop being stubborn idiots, for fuck's sake.
Oh wait, that was me. Wait, what? It was me? You know, the really weird thing here is that I know for a fact that I didn't even care much for Five Nights at Freddy's at the time. So why was I so mad here? And this isn't the only one, there's multiple. I'm genuinely baffled. Did I just like being mad at people more than the game? Yeah, okay, no, that's the answer. That's true. That's it. Regardless, funnily enough, by some small coincidence, this happened. Okay, so I mistakenly remembered hearing that PewDiePie beat the game and exclaimed, "Oh, it's a prequel," and then suddenly everyone changed their mind and agreed it was a prequel. But now I've come back to get the footage. I've realized that he did in fact not say that, because he was too busy lifting his shirt and celebratorily milking himself to notice the image, and caused everyone to oh so suddenly rescind their wrong opinions. Again, I have to stress that PewDiePie milking himself caused nothing of the sort. My god, these people are children, aren't they? And look, no grown adult spells fixated like that or realize. Oh god, Jared, you're 21. Yeah, okay, the impact of this whole segment kind of relied on me finding the other footage and not, the milking footage. I really am sorry. I genuinely kind of forgot where I was going with this, but I think the end point here was to talk about how this theory crafting phenomenon has gradually shifted the intention of collaborative interpretation. It's always been generative, yeah, but the goal surely has always been to better understand a work, to uncover its mysteries together. But under this new lens, the goal is to be the creator of a theory. Even the name, theory crafting, putting an emphasis on the theory as a work of its own. And the result is theories that lean almost toward fanfiction, jumping to assumptions that are impossible to reach from the original source alone. And with the shift of these interpretations becoming creative works in their own right, they become harder to criticize. If you were talking with your friends after watching Lost Highway and someone presented an idea that someone else knew was wrong, say they noticed maybe a pivotal fact that blows a hole in their theory, they'd probably go, "Oh, right, hadn't thought of that," and move on. But now the theory is a creative work in its own right. After all, they've crafted it. Maybe you think it's wrong, but that contradiction is just your theory. And now we've entered the zone of open collaborative fiction. Wait, what? Where are we going with this? What about Signalis? The backrooms, as I remember them, and I will not be addressing the fact that I've misremembered things multiple times at this point, came off the back of the then freshly growing liminal space trend. A focus on the aesthetic of transitory spaces, ones generally only intended for passing through, therefore often having spans of similar sections and lacking defining features. The definition of the word liminal kind of got ground into paste over time though. Waffle House is a liminal space, an abandoned mall is a liminal space, a swimming pool? Oh no, I'm running late for work. I better take my usual shortcut through the fucking swimming pool. I want to say the Backrooms was quite early on though, and it definitely took the right idea and ran with it. What if you accidentally ended up stuck in a place only intended to be transitory, with nowhere to transit to? Just an infinite expanse of identical liminal space with the hypnotically bland sights and sounds only ever intended to be temporary. A maddening isolation, an oppressively vacuous atmosphere, what little sensory input growing from harmless background noise to a ceaseless drilling into your sanity. Anyway, that's the whole post. Nothing more to see. Okay, right, look, I think this is the line that led to things going off the rails. See, I remember at the time interpreting, oh hey, interpreting, we're back on track, this line to highlight the uncertainty of being truly alone here, the paranoia that would grow from any innocent little noise that diverged from the infinite background hum. Oh god, has something else left a mark, or am I going around in circles? The growing paranoid certainty that you're being observed, hunted even, but never actually seeing or truly knowing if it's there. But evidently this is open to interpretation because in the span of 3 years, the Backrooms have become a sort of theme park with multiple levels and a wiki and distinct zones ruled by specific creatures, and in some cases a map, and fucking Garfield lives there! Oh hey, look, it's me. Oh, you know what? I do like it. Yeah, Backrooms! Look, we've got to address the elephant in the room. That most of this is most likely children and teens. It's a harmless, low-stakes creative writing exercise, like fanfiction, you know? It's formative, it's healthy, I think. Also, obviously some of these are jokes. It is based on a meme, after all. Oh no, they've sullied the tone of a 4chan meme from 2019. Curse you, Backrooms!
Ah, they're ruining the Backrooms.
Dude, I know.
But despite me just now undermining my own point and ensuring that anything I say in this paragraph makes me sound like a petty dickhead. Thanks for that, past Jerry. Hey, no problem, future Jerry. It does raise a point about collaborative fiction. You know, who's to say what is and isn't in the spirit of the original post? Like, clearly this isn't, but it didn't get like this overnight. In fact, there's literally infighting over that last line of the original post, but specifically about what should and shouldn't be on level 0, all the while ignoring the fact that defined levels and zones and entities specifically defeat the point of this original, infinitely identical liminal space. And sure, it's a meme, who cares? But is this the fate for all open collaborative fiction? Can you really police a fictional continuity? And if so, what lines do you draw? How do you gatekeep? What, using the notability of the contributor to arbitrarily distinguish canon from fanfiction? I don't know. Luckily, this is an entirely new concern that has never been relevant in the past. On a completely unrelated note, there's one specific work that Signalis uses the most overtly. Oh right, Signalis! So there's this one book. In fact, it's a book about a book. And this book, the fictional book, not the real book, contains maddening truths that either drive its reader mad or invite horrible, twisted beings into their dreams and lives, the distinction between the two often becoming blurred. Alright, so at this point it's pretty obvious that I'm talking about the Necronomicon. The King in Yellow is a book about a book that contains maddening truths that either drive its reader mad or invite horrible, twisted beings into their dreams and lives. Am I doing too many smash cuts? I feel like I'm doing too many smash. Written by Robert W. Chambers, or Bobby Dubs as his friends called him of course, and published in 1895, almost 30 years before the Necronomicon was first mentioned in Lovecraft's works. The two bear a lot of similarities in their narrative use. The King in Yellow, while obviously about the King in Yellow, which is also about the King in Yellow, but don't worry about that, quotes actual excerpts incredibly scarcely. Look, here's every actual direct quote that appears in the book. It's almost tantalizingly sparse. Instead, Chambers chooses to convey most descriptions of the book's content through the rantings of a madman or the nighttime whispers of a freshly traumatized couple. This approach really nails the forbidden but tempting unknown. Like, if he really did quote more, Maybe even we ourselves would go mad. Ooh.
In fact, canon info about this fictional book is so sparse that even Bobby himself gets bored of writing about it halfway through the book. I'm not joking, it's a book of short stories and he doesn't even keep them spooky by the end. He literally just starts telling unrelated romance tales. Only about 45% of The King in Yellow is actually about the King in Yellow.
Bobby, come on. What's going on, mate? Just call it something else. I would have just called it Bobby Dobbs Buck of Flubs, because most of them are rubbish. Come on, mate, Bobby, come on.
Anyway, luckily I managed to find this other book called The Hasta Cycle, Hasta being one of the few known names from the direct quotes.
Thankfully, it looks like the Yellow King mythos has been expanded on collaboratively by multiple writers. In fact, there's even a wiki to help keep track. Oh, wait a minute.
Okay, so promising start. Turns out our buddy Robert actually drew inspiration from an existing pair of short stories by Ambrose Pierce. There's some similarities in tone, but to be honest, he just took names and used them for completely unrelated stuff. Truthfully, they're probably only in here to show where these names came from.
And because they're public domain, so it's free pages, baby.
Next up we have, The King in Yellow.
So I bought this one for nothing. Bobby, come on, mate.
In fact, The King in Yellow in its entirety is also public domain, so you could read it yourself for free if you wanted to. If you can make it past this hefty opening paragraph, that is.
Bobby, you could club someone to death with that thing. Come on.
But here we go. We're past the classic little appetizers. Now we get to the meat. James Blish, Carl Edward Wagner, H.P. Lovecraft, heavyweights of literary horror and science fiction.
Oh, this is it.
Okay, so first up, The River of Night Streaming by Carl Edward Wagner.
Unabashedly horny from start to finish.
Whatever, we're all adults here. Sexuality can be used as an element of horror. I've just watched Lost Highway, whatever, it's fine, next.
More Light by James Blish.
Somehow both a self-insert story and an attempt to actually write the fictional Yellow King book in its entirety. You know, that book with a scarceness of actual quotes with a major source of foreboding. Oof. Alright, well, they can't all be winners, whatever. Next, The Novel of the Black Seal.
Oh, so close, mate, but you got the color wrong.
This one actually has no direct link to The King in Yellow, but some later stories that do also take some inspiration from this, so I'll let it slide. Alright, next. Oh, okay, here we go. The one we've all been waiting for. The Whisperer in Darkness. Okay, so this one does mention The King in Yellow in 2 sentences.
Instead, most of this story is about the Migo, a race of alien fungus men from the planet Yuggoth. I'll give you 3 fucking guesses.
Just give me a sec.
Luckily, this is an entirely new concern that has never been relevant in the past. On a completely unrelated note, you were wrong. I know, it's called foreshadowing, mate.
Yeah, fair enough. I did write this part first. This was, funnily enough, actually my first time reading Lovecraft. And I really wish it wasn't, to be honest. It definitely felt like this was not the right jumping on point, on account of the whole thing feeling like the fucking Star Wars Rogue One of cosmic horror. Sometimes your boy Lovey would thankfully take a little break from writing whole paragraphs about nothing to suddenly start instead reeling off a stilted laundry list of just the names of other completely irrelevant Lovecraft monsters. I mean, look at this! I found myself faced with names and terms that I'd heard elsewhere in the most hideous of connexions. Yuggoth, Great Cthulhu, Tsathogua, Yog-Sothoth, Riliech, Nyarlathotep, Azathoth, Hasta, Yan, Liang, the Lake of Hali, Beth Mura, the Yellow Sign, Lemur Cathulos, Bran, and the Magnum Inum. Like, should I be screeching with delight and pointing wildly at the page with recognition here, or what? I guess it's the dread of just hearing this sheer amount of cosmically incomprehensible creatures being listed. I honestly don't know, but if I wanted to read a massive list of ridiculous names, I'd just look at a UK train timetable.
Hednesford, Cannock, Landywood, Blocks.
But I do have to admit, there was at least one part that got me on the hook. There was a genuinely tense situation where we can really easily deduce something via hints that the main character just hasn't. And there's a genuine, oh god dude, what are you doing? Get out of there feeling. And then the tension is immediately broken by another laundry list. Dude, I will read those other stories, okay? I promise. I didn't ask for mid-rolls in my... If you somehow didn't get one, I put a mid-roll right there. I don't usually do mid-rolls, but I thought it'd be really funny. And also, sorry.
But either way, I'm glad I can finally put this Lovecraft business behind me and finally finish this video. Oh, hang on. Another tab as a Southwest again. Leng? Oh no. Oh no. Oh no, that's a direct Necronomicon quote. No, I don't want to read more Lovecraft right now. No, please, no!
There's this one phrase that goes something like, the best time to do it was back then. The second best time to do it is now. It's in some way meant to be empowering. But the problem with this phrase is that the more you say it without doing anything, it gets worse. See, the best time to do it was back then, and now the second best time to do it was the last time you said this. So what, now the third best time to do this is now? And if you're not careful, you find it haunting you, growing heavier and heavier, until eventually the 400th best time to do it was the 399th time you said this, and now there is no best time. You've missed your chance. But it doesn't even stop there, does it? Because even that version of the phrase has its own cruel irony, that the last time you said it, you hadn't missed your chance. You just thought you had. And as much as the phrase haunts you, you find you haunting your past self, wanting to grab him by the shoulders and scream into his stupid face, "You idiot! You haven't missed your chance! You could still do it! And now, because of you, I've missed my chance for real." And then all of a sudden you feel a familiar set of fingers over your shoulders, and you realize it's just a violent conga line down to the grave, and congratulations, you've done nothing. What was I even talking about? Patreon, I guess, right. A few years back, Patreon changed something. It was the revenue split or something like that, but they gave a warning that if you made an account now, you could keep the old revenue split forever. I didn't make one because, to be honest, look how sparse my content is. I don't make enough to justify a Patreon. What would you even be paying for? So I didn't make one, even just in case. For a while now, I've been trapped in this kind of catch-22. I have countless ideas for videos and albums and even other stuff, but I work long strings of 12-hour shifts. I don't have the time or energy to work on pretty much any of this. But if I was making a living off of the content I was putting out, I would be able to constantly put stuff out. But I would need to be constantly putting stuff out to be making a living off of it in the first place, or even just trying to make a living off of it in the first place. I hear Patreon's kind of dying now anyway, I guess. So what does it matter? I missed my chance. Boy, these hands on my shoulders feel familiar. I raced to get this original video complete in a single session because I could feel it slipping away from me. What started as a little "look at this cool thing I found" video couldn't help but grow into something stupidly ambitious. And I knew that if I didn't immediately put my foot down and force myself through it, I was going to miss my chance entirely. And what do I have to show for it? It's crap. I didn't even get a good video. 1 month ago, I tried to fix a video essay. It was bad. The essay was fundamentally flawed from the get-go. It was a wanton display of ignorance. There's nothing you could do to that footage that wouldn't still come out with me looking like an absolute moron. But the bizarre thing is, even though I barely remember even working on it in the first place, I know for a fact that that person on the screen wasn't me, even then. That's not how I thought. Those weren't my opinions, and for all my self-deprecation, I was nowhere near as oblivious as I was presenting myself here. Somehow, I was channeling opinions I haven't held since I was a bitter, self-absorbed teenager. So, how do you fix that? How do you present this in a way that doesn't just reflect badly on me? It seems a month ago, I thought the answer was that you don't. You make some second through line about missed chances, disjointedly splice it in, and hope some cloying, clumsy stab at sentimentality somehow elevates the thing as a whole. Is it working?
Oh, you're still here. Hello. I thought we were done. Oh, right, that Tesseract business. Hang on. Oh. So, to be honest, I wrote that Tesseract intro when this video was still about Signalis, so it's kind of irrelevant now. Fine, alright, fine, hang on, just let me Let me rest my eyes a minute. Hang on. It's been 30 hours. Oh. Just as the one-dimensional line becomes a two-dimensional square, becomes a three-dimensional cube, so does the three-dimensional cube become a tesseract. Okay, so what is a tesseract? Well, I mean, that was it. I kind of just told you. Okay, let me rephrase a little better here. Alright, lay out a one-dimensional line and then, in 4 equal pieces, fold it out into 2D space. Now it's square time, baby! Oh, but that's easy, I hear you say. A babby could do it. Alright, little Einstein, how about this? Lay out a flat cross made of 6 two-dimensional squares. Oh, I bet you're real stumped now. Alright, 3rd grade called. They want the scissors and paste back. How about this? Take 8 three-dimensional cubes, lay them out in a cross shape in 3D space. Oh, what are you gonna do with those cubes, Professor? Yeah, alright, yeah, you guessed it. We fold them out into 4D space to make a tesseract. Now, obviously it's not possible to show you an actual 4D tesseract, and I'm not even gonna try, so there's a lot of 2D and 3D representations to try and get the point across. This one, a Schlegel diagram, is the most common depiction here, the cube in the middle being the one present in our current slice of 4D space, and those thick outer lines representing the other 4-dimensional sides of the tesseract. You know, of course, that the 4th dimension to us is time, so this common Schlegel diagram is a really good visual shorthand for the 4th dimension. Not always necessarily to represent time travel, but you see that and there's a good suggestion that there's something going on in 4D space that we can't truly perceive in our limited linear way. And Signalis actually uses an— Oh, but wait, sorry, I need to be clear that this is a tesseract, not the tesseract. This is just the cube one. You can do this with literally any 3D shape, standard and non-standard. You know what, hell, let's go find some shapes. So, the polyhedrons, of course, pretty regular stuff here. Got your tetrahedron, your cube, which is actually a hexahedron, by the way. Octahedron, dodecahedron, icosahedron, I mean, you've seen these. You've definitely got some to hand, no need to be coy. Oh, I guess that's not the end of the page. But you get the picture. It continues on like that. No need to scroll. Oh god. Okay, right. Well, there's your shapes, I guess. What? You want more shapes? After you just saw those ones? Oh, alright, fine. Greedy. Let me just look for some more, I guess. Okay, here we go. Nice and friendly again. Cool. So you can truncate a polyhedron by cutting its corners off, basically, and it makes a new shape. Pretty simple stuff. Oh, hey, Tick and Toe, where's Tag? Oh, we have a laugh here at Jerry Terry, don't we? Don't we? Oh, look, it's a football. Now this is more like it. No more of that weird stuff. Like, sure, you can truncate a cube, but no one's gonna come out here and truncate a great icosa. Oh, God. Tidget, Tiggy, quit sissid, quit gissid. I understand Lovecraft now. Being presented with this list of concepts beyond my comprehension. I need more. Take me further. Cringe delivery. Yes, the quasi-regulars. Skip this baby shit. Yes, I am enlightened. Hail to Sahid, he of 20 triangular faces and 6 decagons, smallest of the icosa hemidodecahedron. You know what? I was recently browsing through the back catalog of Jan Measley, something I've been meaning to do for a while, and I stumbled across something from 4 years ago.
What are these secret shapes that Big Shape doesn't want you to know about? I'm Jan Measley, and there are 48 regular polyhedra.
It's been said. It's all been said. It was all said long before I even started trying. I'm just badly retracing the steps of people so much smarter and more articulate than me. Of course, there's billions of videos about the backrooms already that say so much more than I even wanted to say, by people so much better at saying it. Hell, there's probably a billion videos by people worse at saying it who just want to beef with kids. Of course, there's videos about these silly shapes. They're shapes. They're not my little secret. People know about shapes. Why do I care so much about trying to say something that hasn't already been said in a world where everything already has been said? Where can I exist inside of that? Has it been said that Lovecraft and shapes are similar? Can you say something new by just saying something old in a different order?
Dadaism was an art movement that formed in the early 90s.
Shut up! Obviously you can! It was a rhetorical question, and that question is not even original either. But it's not even real most of the time. For one, not doing the Magnus Archives thing was probably for the best, because their thing would have still come out, so I saved myself from countless unfavorable comparisons there. But take the Prey thing, for example. Why can't these two things coexist? Why do I immediately throw away anything I want to do if it turns out someone else has already done it? Even if this is worse, why am I inexplicably terrified of putting out something even vaguely similar to something else? And why don't I see the irony as someone whose best known work is as a remixer? Redoing is a remix of a remix, for God's sake. So much of what I do lives in this realm of being inspired by the work of others and turning it into something new. This fear is unfounded and neurotic, yes, but it's also very hypocritical and inconsistent. There was this one point in time 11 years ago when my laptop was finally repaired. I'd avoided listening to any remixes over the past month and was finally ready to remix the clips I'd been itching to remix. I put out a track called Silver's Theme, and then, with it safely released, I listened to the other remixers' takes on the same clip, and the worst case scenario came to pass. Here's a clip from my version. And here's a clip from a remix by Matt Steelman. I'm kidding, obviously, but could you imagine? But here's the real clip. Silver's gone. You can't even see him. I don't even see him. Did you hear it? I don't even see him. I don't even see him. We'd both made the exact same decision, the exact same spoken words, with the exact same phone-like EQ effect over the top. How could that be a coincidence? No one's gonna buy that. For all it was worth, my mastermind plan to avoid listening had screwed me over, because if anything, listening would have helped me to avoid it. I panicked, genuinely. I was fraught with the fear of the inevitable. Any minute now, the comments would come pouring in.
Jerry Terry is a plagiarist? Let's kill it!
Any second now, I would hear the yelling and smashing as they break down my door and set fire to my house. And then, nothing. Days passed, weeks passed, 11 years passed. Nobody cared. Of course, nobody cared. It would be a frankly insane thing for anybody to even notice. Boy, I sure am glad I learned my lesson from this and didn't hang on to a paradoxical anxiety that doesn't even make sense for 11 more years. I don't even know what the takeaway is supposed to be from this. Not for you, this isn't even for you, but for me at least, what is making this even done for me? I expected to be some kind of catharsis from this, but all I'm left with is a bad video that's now somehow even worse. It's about me. It's all about me. How do you fix an embarrassing display of ignorance by turning it into a clumsy exercise in self-pity? I think the only time I said anything that held any truth to it was the time I got hot and tired and had a breakdown on camera. Oh, maybe it's too late. Oh no, it's not too late, you idiot. I was fucking talking about those shapes earlier, acting as if that video by Jan Measley was in the same league as me just vaguely pointing at some shapes and going, some shapes, some weird shapes. Whereas he goes on this whole fucking rampage of explaining what they are in a really interesting and entertaining way. What the fuck am I doing with my life? I could just die right now, and honestly, I would be relieved. There is a way to create a video essay and cleverly and artfully spin it into addressing your own insecurities. And that video is called I Don't Know James Rolfe. Instead, all you get here is just me, and even me. And truthfully, I don't know who any of these people are. The best time to do it was back then. The 1000th best time to do it was now the last time you said it. Every time you say it, it's a worse time, but that's just a distraction. Because really, the nail was in the coffin the first time you said it, right? If you missed the perfect chance, why would you bother with second best? I release so little content despite countless ideas and unfinished projects, and sure, I really don't have much time and energy after work to tackle them all, but it's not even that, is it? It's that in an unfinished state, nothing can be bad. You just haven't finished it yet. As soon as it's done, I have to wrestle with the idea that I just can't make things as good as they are in my head. And this video, this garbage fire of a video, stood in my files for 2 years as a monument to that.
somehow this video has been blocking me from doing anything for 2 years because of what it would have said about me if I'd released it. So the answer is just delete it and move on. But I couldn't. Even if you haven't seen it, I have. If I could somehow just fix it, even if it meant uploading the whole thing with an overlay of me pointing and shaking my head the whole time, just so you as an audience could know that I'm not someone who's so outspokenly stupid and ignorant and obnoxious and bitter, and so I could know it too, because I'm definitely not that. I don't know what I am, but please, for the love of God, don't let it be that. I knuckled down and forced myself to follow through on something for once, and it sucked. And I have to come to terms with the fact that that's gonna happen sometimes, which is a shame because coming to terms with that fact probably means I'm going to have to upload this. Uh-oh. A friend of mine recently pointed out something to me that, in hindsight, should have been really obvious. That catch-22 that's been holding me back from doing something like making a Patreon, it operates under the assumption that everything would continue at the exact same pace it has been, when really there's so much smaller scale stuff I could have been doing to fill in those gaps. Like, if I just set my sights on some more manageable projects and some small exclusive stuff like tutorials and works in progress and maybe even some more experimental ideas I have. And I could probably spin some interesting stories about the countless abandoned projects I've had over the years. Like, did you know I once tried to make a rock opera based on the novelization of Metal Gear? And with the community aspect, I could probably do something like take song cover requests or remix requests or whatever. I don't know. I honestly don't know what kind of reception or engagement something like that would get. But if anything, that unknown's kind of exciting, right? Just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. And yeah, if I had come up with this 5 years ago, it would have been better. Patreon's worse now, money is worse now, but why not try? Why wonder, you know? Anything's gotta be better than this. Like, yeah, the best time to do it was back then, but maybe now's still a perfectly fine time to try. Couldn't be bothered to get up. Close the door. Let's give it another take. That sucked. Fuck you, Jerry. Whatever. Ago, I tried to fix we can't keep doing this. I keep sending in new me's to fix the messes the old me's have made, and inevitably, by the time I cross the barrier from idea to execution, there's this thick fog, and me always becomes him. And he's the stupidest person I've ever met. This video's been chewing up my insides for 2 years because, in truth, it's just a nonsensical stream of consciousness rant that any sensible person would see the next day and throw straight in the trash. It's an embarrassing mistake. It's gonna make me look bad, no matter what. There's just no fixing something so fundamentally broken. So, if I can't just delete it, what's the next best option? Hey, if we're already taking out the trash, we may as well air all of my bizarre anxieties and insecurities and set this garbage on fire, right? It's already happened again, I can tell. I'm him. And somewhere out there, there's a me watching this back, fighting the urge to give it just one more try. Surely just one more me is all it's going to take to fix this mess, to tie up all these loose ends, to solve all these ridiculous neuroses with a neat little button, and finally get the catharsis from this that I wanted in the first place. But how do you fix the unfixable? And then it hit me.